All of the teachers at UA have their own unique approach when it comes to teaching the future generation of heroes, each with them specializing in a specific field or profession that makes them especially equipped to teach the lessons that they're teaching. For example, you have Midnight, who teaches modern hero arts and history, and works to guide students on the do's and don'ts of hero society when creating their persona. And the reason she was given this role is Midnight single-handedly changed laws and regulations in hero society due to her original costume. Though if I had to pick one teacher from that school who gave the best lessons to their students, I think the only real choice is the straightforward and strict sleeping bag Shota Aizawa, also known as the pro hero Eraserhead. Now this video will contain spoilers for both My Hero Academia and My Hero Academia Vigilantes, up to the most recent arcs in those respected mangas as of this video's release. So watch with warning, though a lot of the spoilers don't come until later. Shota Aizawa is a pro hero turned teacher who played a pivotal role in the main story of Hero Aka, along with Vigilantes as well. He joined UA as a teacher in order to guide the future generation of heroes away from being needlessly reckless, and he's one of the most strict teachers at the school, if not the most strict. And even though he may have a small stature and a gloomy exterior, he's one of the best instructors that UA has to offer, given that his past has conditioned him to deliver extremely harsh punishments for those who are underperforming or recklessly overdoing it. Though before we get too into that, let's discuss both the meaning behind his name and design. Shota Aizawa's name works in the same vein as all other names in Hero Aka, where the characters that comprise the name play into his role or personality when you dissect them. Starting first with his family name, Aizawa, which when broken down is comprised of characters that mean to evaluate or to see something, which can play into how his quirk works, but the second character means brilliance, so altogether, Aizawa means to evaluate brilliance. And when you mix in together the fact that the I in Aizawa is an alternate reading of the word counselor, this name was likely chosen to play into his role as a teacher at UA. And this is somewhat reinforced by the fact that Aizawa was actually chosen by Horikoshi as a replacement homeroom teacher in place of Midnight during the developmental stage of Hero Aka. So his role is very important to his character and could have influenced his name. Then of course you have his given name Shota, which is comprised of the characters that mean to, as in to do something, and erase. So altogether, Aizawa's given name Shota means to erase, which seems to be in direct reference to his quirk, Erasure. Erasure is a long-range emitter-style quirk that is very basic yet extremely powerful in the right hands. Or, I guess, the right eyes, as it's a quirk that allows the user to cancel out the quirks or abilities of others simply by looking at them. Or, to be more specific, this blocks the target's quirk factor, meaning that even mutations and heteromorphic style quirks are partly affected by it, as their mutated limbs would fall limp or they'd become uncontrollable by normal means, but some quirks are inherently unaffected for the most part. But Aizawa has designed hero tools to deal with those who are unaffected by his quirk, since they tend to be more hand-to-hand style fighters anyways. And this comes in the form of his capture scarf, which is a cloth-like weapon made from a carbon fiber and special metal alloy that seems to harden and tighten when placed under an intense kinetic force. Aizawa appears to be very skilled with this weapon, and this comes from him inventing a whole fighting style that he developed upon for 6 years called the binding cloth style, which he had to do to make up for the fact that his quirk, while powerful, wasn't exactly flashy. Though for those still affected by erasure, all it needs to work is a single part of the target's body to be within eyesight while it's activated for it to take into effect, which is what makes fighting Aizawa such a pain, especially when he implements his other hero tool, that being a pair of customized goggles that he uses to black out his eyes from his targets so that they don't know who exactly he's using his quirk on at any given time. As without these goggles, there's a bit of an easy tell when the quirk is activated, as Aizawa's eyes will begin to glow with a golden yellow, or red in the anime in Vigilantes, which is rather interesting actually, as the colors chosen to represent Aizawa's quirk being active might have been picked due to color theory, as red and yellow are the most eye-catching colors for the human eye. It's the one that we react to the most, it's why stop signs are red and why taxis are yellow. So an eyesight-based quirk using these colors is likely intentional, although the series is mostly in black and white. But on top of all that, his hair also begins to stand on ends. It would also seem like his scarf begins to float in the air, but that just seems to be a cool visual effect rather than anything directly related to Aizawa's quirk activation, as in the manga it would appear that Aizawa actively motions to activate his scarf rather than it just activating. Though on top of this, given that it's a sight-based quirk, there's one clear weakness, and that's a human limitation, being the need to blink, because the moment that Aizawa breaks eye contact with someone, the effects of the erasure disappear. This means that Aizawa's blind spots are now his major weak points as well, and in fights where Aizawa is outnumbered, he can't realistically keep track of all potential attackers around him for a long period of time, which is likely why he tended to take on single target villains back when he worked as an underground hero, and on top of that, he's also very susceptible to eyesight damaging attacks like big flashes of light or smoke. Also, his quirk requires a charge between activations. Now, Erasure the quirk doesn't seem to have any direct influence over it. It's a very simple concept, but his hero name seems to be in direct reference to the David Lynch movie Eraserhead, which is a movie that is strongly believed to be about having to make something of oneself and the dread of one's own purpose, with the story being about a man who deep down was content to coast or drift through life, yet can't be happy because the idea of not applying oneself is seen as a waste of life, which is a message that fits very well for Aizawa's own history, starting out as a slacker at UA, but slowly becoming a workaholic, though we'll discuss that a little more later on in the video. On top of this, it's very possible that Aizawa's hair standing up when he uses his quirk is a reference to the cover of Eraserhead. But on top of the Eraserhead reference, it's not too much of a stretch of the imagination to assume that Horikoshi was in part inspired by Naruto's own Kakashi Hatake when creating Shota Aizawa, be it either in the visual design, as they are both darkly dressed teacher figures who obscure their face when working and have special eye-based abilities, though that last portion is something that Horikoshi claims is unintentional, but he might have subconsciously done it because of how he grew up with the series. And beyond that, they're also similar in many other ways, some that will be discussed more later on in the video, but this comes right down to even their own introduction to the series, with both of them showing up and beginning to test their students, only for the mentor character of the protagonist to learn about their new protege's instructor, and getting nervous because that teacher is famous for failing his students. Though the reason behind their track record of failures is different. With Kakashi, he was focusing more on teaching students the importance of teamwork and cooperation, along with testing to see if they know when the best time to break the rules are, where Aizawa was focusing more on the ideas of giving students a metaphorical death in a sense, giving them a huge failure in life to improve upon when the stakes are super low, so they don't go throwing their lives away doing something idiotic. But the inspiration behind their actions is very similar, as it spawned from the death of a very close friend. In the case of Kakashi, it was Obito, where Aizawa, it was Oboro, his best friend throughout his entire time at UA. And in a way, he was everything that Aizawa wasn't. He was outgoing, talented, and even had a powerful and flashy quirk. The two of them worked very hard to help each other grow as well, as Oboro is the one who suggested that Aizawa start wearing goggles to protect his eyes in the first place, and the two of them would begin working at the same hero agency after being suggested to it by Midnight, this being the Purple Revolution agency run by the pro-hero known as His Purple Highness. And it was here that Aizawa would begin to grow more confident in himself, being able to work not only more efficiently, but being more outgoing like Oboro. And the two of them were growing at such a rapid rate until, during their time working at the hero agency, a violent villain attack took place, which resulted in not only His Purple Highness getting critically injured, but Oboro, while in the middle of a rescue attempt, was caught off guard by falling debris, taking a large chunk of rock to the head, killing him almost instantaneously before his body was crushed under the rest of the debris. Which could be a nod to both Kakashi and Obito's own paths together, and especially so since after this, Aizawa was left all by himself to take on the villain that caused this attack to happen. Though he was able to push through this weakness thanks to the words of his dead friend, which came through what is assumed to be an adrenaline rush-based illusion that projected Oboro's voice through the speakers on his own hero tool, which was a gourd. And with this encouragement, Aizawa was actually able to push through and conquer a villain that was giving pro-heroes a tough time. From here, Aizawa would gain a lot of respect from his school and classmates as he became the kid known for taking on a major level threat. And all the while, he trained endlessly to become stronger, which in turn made him become more and more detached from the rest of his class, which continued all the way into graduation, as Aizawa decided not to join any hero agency in specific, becoming a solo underground agent. Similar again to Kakashi, because after the death of his two teammates, he joined the Anbu. From here, Aizawa would begin working as a pro hero in the underground circuit, improving constantly and becoming an active presence in Vigilante's own story. But all the while he was working independence, his high school friends like Midnight and Present Mike, who was actually the one that gave him his hero name, would be joining UA as teachers and pestering him to join too. And after a while, he gave in to their pokes and prods, becoming a teacher at UA, though he would become an extremely strict one, demanding the authority to expel and re-enroll students at will, as through this, he would be able to instill the message he wanted to send. This is to teach those how to recover from a crushing failure. So this way, they can learn and improve from this failure and realize the difference between self-sacrificial heroics and stupidly dangerous actions. And a lot of his students in the second year seem to really respect Aizawa for giving them that chance. Sure, they think that he was sort of a jerk for doing it, but they kind of understood the message, which again is very similar to Kakashi, who was a very strict teacher, so strict in fact that he actually felt that his teaching methods were hindering the message he was trying to send, but he was reinvigorated by the fact that he met some of his failed students and saw how they improved due to the lessons that he taught them. Along with this, later on in the series, it's revealed that Oboro's body was used in an experiment by the League of Villains to create the Nomu Koragiri, who was made to act as a guardian for Shigaraki and as active transportation for the League, with his quirk Warp Gate. Though because Oboro's body was being used to create Koragiri, his spirit lingered deep within the Nomu, and during the reunion at Tartarus Prison between Aizawa, Present Mike, and Koragiri, Aizawa was able to force Oboro to the surface to reveal plot-critical information that led to the Paranormal Liberation War arc. This reveal is actually very similar in nature to Obito's own reveal as a secret member of the Akatsuki under the name Toby. Along with this, he also possessed a space-time warping ninjutsu which allowed Obito, to make things simple, teleport. Along with this, his actions within the Akatsuki were done to lead to the Fourth Great Ninja War arc in Naruto, so it's very possible that this reveal and storyline lead-in are somewhat inspired by Naruto as well. Though long before any of these events happened, Aizawa would find himself the homeroom teacher of UA's most eventful class. Class 1A. And it's during this year of teaching that Aizawa would become personally interested in three specific people. First being Hitoshi Shinso, a young boy that didn't even make it into the hero course itself, but what made him stand out is that he reminded Aizawa too much of himself, being someone who possessed a powerful quirk that wasn't exactly flashy and lacked confidence in himself. And after seeing his performance at the UA Sports Festival, Aizawa reached out to Shinso and worked with him to have him moved into the hero course itself. Along with this, Aizawa started training Shinso in the binding cloth style of fighting, and getting him a hero tool that would work in a similar manner for Shinso's voice as Aizawa's goggles do for his eyes. But the next person who stood out to Aizawa was Shinso's previous opponent at that sports festival, that being Deku. Originally focusing on him due to the fact that his quirk harmed him when he used it, wanting to cut loose a person that would go and get themselves killed. Yet when Deku proved that he could adapt and move through the pain, Aizawa accepted that he had a chance to make it in the world. Along with this, after All Might's secret is revealed to the world, as well as Deku and Bakugo's fight at the academy, Aizawa became somewhat of Deku's new guardian, taking part in the 8 Precepts case due to his previous connection to the quirk booster that they peddled, but also in part to keep an eye on Deku, making sure he doesn't go and get himself killed. And during these events, Aizawa would end up meeting the third person that would change his life for the better. Someone who embodied the future that he wished to protect. This being Eri, the granddaughter of the 8 Precepts boss. Eri is a young girl born with an uncontrollable and extremely dangerous anomaly quirk that was utilized by the 8 Precepts to create quirk killer bullets. Though, thanks to the help of the pro heroes during the 8 Precepts raid, Eri was rescued from that location and more so adopted by Aizawa and UA. Together, Aizawa will use his quirk to keep hers in check as she grows and learns to control it. Eri, Deku, and Shinso are in a sense the exact kind of people that Aizawa was trying to save by becoming a teacher. They are stray cats in a sense, people lost in the world, but with his help, one day they can grow and become stronger and help others, and over time the world will become a better place. And cats are actually kind of a running visual theme for Aizawa, being his favorite thing. Literally his favorite thing, check his bio. And this could be in part due to the stray cat him and Oboro rescued while they were still in school that was later adopted by Midnight. This cat is in a way a representation of a hopeful future that Aizawa is fighting for, which makes him buying all those outfits for Eri that have a big cat theme to them a little bit more than just a goofy joke. She, along with all of his students, are an embodiment of a bright, hopeful future. One which motivates him to fight overwhelming obstacles that lay before him, be it massive beasts or terrifying monsters. Aizawa won't let those who died in order to keep him in the world, or those whose future heroics have yet to be told, go to waste, willing to push his limits and mutilate his own body in order to protect those that he cares about, as he knows very well the difference between a self-sacrificial action and a suicidal one. To quote Tomoro Shigaraki, "Eraserhead is pretty cool." And with that all said and done, I feel like Aizawa is probably one of the best teacher characters, if not the best teacher character in the entirety of Hero Acca, as he's been through a lot throughout this series, going through a lot of things either physically or psychologically, and his motivation to pick himself back up and continue to work without issue is honestly really cool. And while I do point out a lot of his connections to Kakashi in this video, I don't feel like they are similar in execution, being more of a homage to something that Horikoshi loved growing up, with him even addressing it partly in an interview that he did back in the day. Ultimately, Aizawa has been a pivotal character throughout Hero Acca, and he's the type of character that keeps me coming back to see where he's going in the story. He's also a big selling point for the side story of Vigilantes, which I would recommend you check out if you haven't. It's very important to Aizawa's character. And with that in mind, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos like it in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/ManyNotTheBadGuy. Patreon is a very helpful tool that helps keep this channel flowing as consistently as it does. And if you want to see past Eraserhead's own Eraser quirk, you can do so by buying a copy of Shimonetta at buyshimonetta.com.